This challenge of writing and stretching the edge of time, subject matter, race, identity, sexism, slavery, and its legacy, we can count on the name of Askia Touré being in that order. He is committed to the raising of the consciousness of all people, and I am sure we will experience that enrichment here in this place tonight. In reference to his work and the African context, he responds, and I quote, "I prefer to call it African restoration because I try to restore and resurrect the ancient archetypes of the African people. Join me in bringing our brother of the spoken and written word, Askia Touré."
I seem to have a problem with the spirits of the weather in Boston. Every time I get to do something that's pretty major, old man winter comes and snows everybody out. I had the good fortune to have the dynamic actor and dramatist Jackie Parker and her company do actually plays from my green book, Mother Earth Responds, and big thing, and they have a nice announcement in the Globe and everything, and of course the banner. Do you know that darn day it snowed so bad? I think we must have had about, it was a smaller audience than you guys. You guys were a bigger audience than what we had at this outstanding theater. I said, oh man. And so Jackie and them did a wonderful job. And after they dramatized my poems, and I was just thrilled. I had a guest who's also a photographer and something of a filmmaker. And this gentleman videotaped everything. And you know he would not give me a copy of that. He was a guest. I mean, he stayed at my little house and stuff. He and a lady friend of mine stayed, and to this day he voiced me and he won't give me a copy. I said, look, I'll give you full credit, just give me. I said, nobody, I said, you know, I said, they were treating me, I said, I'm so honored. I said, the artists in Boston were treating me like Papa Langston, you know, they did, you know, I said, oh, I'm so thrilled. And he's just totally kind of, he just avoids because I know he's going to ask me about that. And he seems to think that that's irrational that, you know, I asked him for a copy of that. And I said, look, I'll give you full credit, no problem. I just want a copy. So, nope, he just won't do it. So I just let it go after a while. Some say, well, they ask you, just let it go, let it go. But I couldn't believe it. The original, the wonderful, the museum did the original advertising, and I said, oh man, I said, this is one, here we go. I said, look at that, man, I'm right up under Dr. King, look out. Bam, I said, oh man. And so we shutting down Boston again. I said, oh, not again. So it's with a particular thankfulness that I just want to express to you for coming out and sharing this evening with me. And finally we were able to break through against the snow giant or whatever. I guess the earth is a little angry at us for all the global warming and stuff. And believe me, I understand, but don't punish the poets. Get the rich people who deny that there's any problem, you know? Shoot, I'm definitely doing what I can for environmentalism and trying to eat according to the laws of the positive parts of the planet and so forth. So it's my pleasure this time to come forth here at the museum and finally share with you the work. And also, one of the great pleasures is this beautiful Black Arts Movement reader, SOS Calling All Black People, is over 600 pages, and it deals with what Dr. James E. Smether said was the largest cultural movement in the history of the United States. Now, you don't get that in the corporate media. So, the book is a course in itself. You can, with this reader, you can actually teach. And so the colleges or the universities have been just gobbling this up. It's been out a couple of months and it's just been going crazy, which is wonderful. One of the points I wanted to make is that I've been, in some cases, given credit for developing part of the process of developing Africana studies, but one of the things that, in spite of our great thinkers and persons, I point out to audiences that Africana studies didn't come out of the recent thinking of some brilliant supergiant of a scholar. Africana studies came out of the freedom schools, the Black freedom movement in the South. Myself and Dr. Muhammad Ahmed actually taught in the Kofo Freedom School. Kofo is the Council of Federated Organizations, CORE, SNCC, NAACP, SCLC, other groups. And we began to, I think it was Dr. Joyce Ladner. I was trying to figure out, I had gotten hold of a book that showed the ancient Egyptians and Nubians, and I was showing it to the kids in the freedom schools. Of course, it was a severely wounding experience, but, and I'll elaborate on that in a minute, but I was saying, how the heck did I get hold of a book that had the pictures of the ancient Egyptians and Nubians? And I think that I had met Dr. Joyce, who became Dr. Joyce Ladner of Howard University, but I knew her as Joyce and her sister Dory. They were activists in voting rights and stuff with us in SNCC. And so I think Joyce got, for some way, got hold of that history book for me. And so what was so painful about that was sitting down with the young people and showing them the pictures of our ancestors looking just like them, in spite of the BS from Hollywood, looking just like them. And the kids told me no. And so I said, what? I said, but look, see, they said no. And they kept averting their eyes. And that was the strangest experience I had, because we did things in Harlem, and the kids were hugging you and shaking your hand and stuff. And then it finally came to me why they said that. Because if they internalize that in the Mississippi Delta, it might get them killed. So they would just rather not know. And these are youngsters, I mean, the junior high school age kids, preteens, and of course, teenagers as well. And that was a devastating realization, because I kept saying, but don't you see, this is the reason they were dealing with their lives, you know? And so when people talk about Africana studies and Black studies, whatever, Afro-American studies, whatever term you're most familiar with, I always correct people that some super geniuses, a coterie of super geniuses somewhere didn't come up with this. Actually, Black studies came out of the freedom schools in the Black freedom movement in the South, and then from the South into the urban North and the inner cities and so forth, you know. So it was our honor to experiment. I remember after I left Greenwood, after I left Mississippi, Dr. Ahmed and I left Mississippi, I went north briefly, and then I came to Atlanta, and I joined SNCC's Urban Project, Atlanta Project. And that's where I was very honored to help put together the Black Atlanta Project Black Power position paper, and that I was a co-writer of Professor Donald Stone and William Ware, who was the project director of the Atlanta Project, and we put together what became known as a Black Power position paper, and we sent it out to the various SNCC projects throughout the South. And it's funny because at first Stokely and them disagreed with it and stuff, but that's the way SNCC was. And then later, almost took credit for it. So we said, okay, whatever, as long as it. But somebody, they got to going with each other, and we never did this, but it turned up in the New York Times. And so we said, and then they did an editorial on us. And so we said, man, boy, these guys, boy, they really stay in our business, boy. But somebody had sent it to them and so forth. And so that became the basis of the transformation of SNCC. The positions were always there with each other. It was like a dialectical kinds of a thing. One thing I just want to say, I would say to a northern audience, don't believe the hype that the Southern movement was these nonviolent pacifists floating in the air. We got down in Mississippi, everybody was armed. And so we noticed that they would talk very almost patronizingly to some of the northern activists. And so I said, well, especially liberal kids, I said, why are they doing this? Like they were speaking to somebody who was retarded or something. And then after they would leave, then they would talk to us the regular way. And so guess what? We found out everybody was armed, including the ministers. The only people that were unarmed were the some of the SNCC nonviolent activists. So when we found that out, man, we were shocked. And so they gave us sort of mischievous grins. They said, well, you know, this is the South, and we do a lot of hunting down here. And so we say, yeah, right, because they were talking to people like they were crazy, because you are living among Nazis who have a history of lynching your people. You must be crazy if you're going to be unarmed among a pack of human wolves. So that's the way they rolled. But Dr. Akinyele Amoja of Georgia State University wrote a brilliant study on this called "We Will Shoot Back," and more or less armed self-defense struggle in the Southern Freedom Movement, and dealing with organizations like the Deacons for Defense and Justice in Bogalusa, Louisiana, and other Republican New Africa people, and other local defense units throughout Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. And it was my honor to be a judge for the Penn Oakland to get Dr. Amoja's study one of the Penn Oakland Literary Awards. But you know, we have to remember that a lot of times no one asks the local people what they think. And so you got New York Times, CBS, NBC, ABC, all of them, and they are putting out one reality for various reasons. And then there's what the actual people on the scene think and who struggle from day to day. So I could go on and on, but I just wanted to quietly point that out and just say to you that in the period from the early 60s to at least into the 80s, according to Professor James Smethurst, we created the largest cultural movement in the history of the United States. To give you an example of what I'm talking about, in the period from the mid-60s to the late 70s going into the 80s, we had anywhere from 12 to 15 functioning journals all over the country, the West Coast, the South, the Midwest, and the East Coast, going simultaneously. We created our own Black Liberation Press, what scholars have called the revolutionary journals. It's very important because a lot of times you get, well, you know, you get nonsense, you know, and parading itself as history from people who don't know and weren't there and didn't participate. And so that's why Professor Jim Smethurst, one of the reasons why Professor Smethurst called it the largest single culture movement in the history of the United States. Out of that came formations like the revolutionary theaters, repertory theaters, the Black Arts Repertory Theater School. So you like a combination of theater and the school, of all kinds of drama groups and so forth. And one of the things was eternal blessing for us, that we were just coming of age and getting ourselves into our maturity during the time of the great master John Coltrane, Anada Ruth, and his wife, Sister Aparna Touré, Alice Coltrane, and his continuing disciple, Pharaoh Sanders, who's still playing, and of course, greats like Miles Davis and Thelonious Monk and Max Roach, the great legendary drummer, and the great woman that a lot of you probably don't even recognize the depths of her gifts, Abby Lincoln Roach, Aminata Moseka, one of the things that happened to us, and I have the epic poem that I wrote about this incident called Cry Freedom. One of the, black people all over the world were just thrilled because the Congolese people got their freedom led by this brilliant young man, this charismatic freedom fighter and poet, Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba. And he saw the whole thing of setting up a government of the people, by the people, for the people, and building a communalistic society. And certain people in certain high places didn't go along with that. And so they had certain traitors to capture him and actually take his life. And it caused our movement to explode. It's pre-Black Arts, I guess you would say. But what happened was, led by sisters like Abby Lincoln Roach and her lieutenant, Maya Angelou, and some of the sisters who had worked with Robert F. Williams, like Mae Mallory from Monroe, North Carolina. Black people went down into the United Nations in the balcony and confronted Ambassador Adlai Stevenson and called him a liar and a murderer and charged the United States government with the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. And, well, you know, fighting broke out in the gallery, and it went all the way down from the gallery to the first floor and out into the streets, where hundreds of us were picketing. Well, hundreds of us were picketing. And so it got rough after that, because some fool paraded some uniformed Belgian soldiers up in uniform, about 30, 40 Belgian soldiers. So that was not a wise thing to do on that day. So there was just fighting in the streets all over the place. As a result of that, the New York Times came out and he showed a picture of one of the elders in Harlem, a man who was in his 80s, and he was crying. It's beautiful. You can look this up in the Times. Very poignant picture. He was crying, tears flowing from his eyes. He said, "My God, they have killed Patrice Lumumba." And the New York Times wrote an interview. I wanted to see your response to it. The editorial, they were doing editorials on us. They said, "What is happening in our inner cities? The Negro, in his frustrated efforts at civil rights, is beginning to identify with the African." So we said, what? You know, we had a lot of smart alecky self. We said, well, aren't y'all Jewish? So y'all don't live in Israel, you live in the United States. So, but you're the only people that can happen to? What do you think? What do you think this is? And so they seem to be genuinely shocked at our behavior, you know. So, but we said, I don't know, we're not going. And of course, our good Negro leaders like Dr. Ralph Bunche and other people jumped on us. And then this little dynamic writer from Harlem, this essayist and novelist by the name of James Baldwin, told him where he could go, and then was backed up by this brilliant young lady, this playwright named Lorraine Hansberry. And they, ruckus was starting. We had they talk about a dialogue on race here. That's the rhetoric that we had a dialogue on race. Boy, did we have a dialogue on race. And so it was going hot and heavy. And so we as a generation were deeply scarred, not only by the attacks upon our people. Is almost like this is happening now. It's like post-Reconstruction too. Them blowing up churches and killing our babies and so forth. That's what propelled me into Mississippi. Of course, I was an activist in the North, but I was somewhat comfortable and working in Harlem and the Lower East Side of New York. But when they blew up 16th Street Baptist Church, the comrades came by my house. They said, "How you doing?" I thought my head was going to explode. They said, "Well, you ready now?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Good, good." And so I left New York and I went south. Straight into we had a national conference of students in Nashville, Tennessee, a national black student conference. Students from all over the country came, female and male. And then from there we went, Max Stanford, Dr. Muhammad Ahmed and I went into Mississippi and hooked up with SNCC in Mississippi. And we stayed for a while and then came back north, and then later I went down and joined the Atlanta Project after the start of the Black Arts Movement. That's a whole, I guess you might say, epic narrative in itself. But I just want to caution you, you know, the media and so forth categorizes people and movements. It wasn't that way. Because you were a poet or a painter or a photographer did not mean that you didn't work with poor people and tenant farmers and stuff to try to organize them. I mean, we did it all. And then when you got some time, you might go to a blues concert, or if you were in the North, you might hear Monk or Miles Davis or Coltrane. I mean, it was like everything was flowing together. And so our thing was, we were trying to strategize to how we were going to free our people. One thing that breaks my heart today, you don't hear black people talking about freedom as though we are free. Free people don't have their children shot down in the streets on a daily basis by the militarized state. That doesn't happen to free people, you know? Free people don't have to say Black Lives Matter. Free people don't have to say that. That's a known reality. So, some of the more perceptive scholars have called this post-Reconstruction too. And of course, I know I'm just exaggerating, and I'm sure America's gonna do the right thing so we can all practice brotherhood and sisterhood together. I'm just being a nervous Nelly, I guess. I just want to quote a few things, and then I'll go into the reading. This is my introduction in SOS, Calling All Black People, Poetry and Black Liberation, Freedom's Furious Passions. And then I got 3 quotes, because you know the establishment people said we were just a bunch of ignorant black racists in reverse. So I got three quotes. The first one, quote, "Great art comes not from thought, but from ecstasy. And ecstasy always coexists with pain." William Butler Yeats, 1913 to 14. Quote, "Throughout the earth let dead lips congregate. Out of the depths spin this long night to me, as if I rode at anchor here with you." Pablo Neruda, The Summits of Machu Picchu. Quote, "This is not a poem, but a way into things. Not a poem, but a prayer, unquote. Larry Neal, Black Arts Movement, 1965. I am a representative of a generation of dreamers, warriors, and visionaries who sought to forge a new direction for the African American nation. The blues people, inventors of soul food and soul music, creators, innovators of that great modern music, popularly known as jazz, laboring under the vicious bondage of official United States sanctioned apartheid in the 1950s and 60s, known as, quote, Jim Crow, unquote, segregation. We sought not only to free ourselves from modern 20th century slavery, but to create another reality where our entire people would not only be free, but powerful, an emerging sovereign force in a post-colonial world consisting of what, to quote Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, mainly colored people, unquote. In fact, 4/5 of the human population being peoples of color. Well, being bards as well as activists, we began the awesome task of imagining a new reality for African America. A reality where black women and men would actually have and wield power. Hence our call for, quote, black power, unquote, which really seemed to upset our friends and, quote, fellow Americans, the dominant Anglo-Saxon majority. If we had, like our betters, the black middle-class civil rights elite, call for merely, quote, civil rights and integration / assimilation, then our liberal Protestant masters would have been quite satisfied, even reassured. But we were poets and visionaries who kept asking questions about, quote, who really controls America? And, quote, why were they rich and the majority of us poor? And what was white skin privilege and white supremacy? And why did the poorest white feel superior to Dr. King and Mrs. Rosa Parks? And why did the Anglo majority, for the most part, live in well-groomed suburbs, while the majority of us lived in modern Bantu-stans known as black inner-city ghettos? Meanwhile, in our drama, like Day of Absence or Dutchman and the Slave, we imagine what it would be like if black people called the shots, were in power, or if the poor working masses held power in the land. Then, of course, Africa had recently overthrown centuries of European colonialism and was busily engaged in, quote, wars of liberation, unquote, against the invader Portuguese and the Boers in southern Africa. Then 90 miles from Florida, the workers and farmers, the poor of tiny Cuba seized power and threw out the local dictator Batista, along with the mafia gangsters who ran Cuba's gambling casinos. They declared socialism, a workers' and farmers' revolution, and invited hundreds of, quote, young Americans, unquote, including black students, scholars, and artists, among whom were Professor Harold Cruz, poet Leroy Jones / Amiri Baraka, and boxing champion Joe Louis. Concurrently, President Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana invited many African Americans, including Dr. John Henry Clark, Professor Maya Angelou, and artist Tom Feelings to Ghana. From there, black people visited Nigeria and other countries, witnessed the North Africans of Angola throw out the French colonialists and declare Algeria free. In Asia, the Vietnamese defeated the French, then had to fight a second war against U.S. invaders and ended up defeating the U.S. military machine. And so we witnessed the dark majority fighting for freedom and winning in many cases. As a young oppressed generation, Our poetry imagined a world where no one was privileged while millions were starving or homeless or preyed upon by drugs or murderous, vicious killer cops, invading armies, or arrogantly labeled, quote, culturally deprived, or, quote, third world, or, quote, savages, or, quote, terrorists, merely for wanting freedom and self-determination. As we began to mature and become more politically aware, we began to echo the voices of our greatest poets, our prophets, young Dr. King and the fiery minister Malcolm X, both viciously assassinated by our masters because they dared to dream and work for the liberation of African Americans and all of oppressed humanity. If you hadn't seen Selma, please see it. More and more our vision grew wings and flew throughout white races, uptight America, as we poets, artists, and visionaries met each other demonstrating on picket lines, conducting boycotts and marching at the United Nations, protesting the murder of Prime Minister of the Congo, the freedom fighter and poet Patrice Lumumba. As we grew through struggle, our poems began to reflect our advanced vision, I'm quoting, we want a black poem and a black world. Let the world be a black poem, and let all black people speak this poem silently or loud. Leroy Jones, Amiri Baraka. Quote, I'm not an invisible man. My song, like rain, is universal. I'm not an invisible man. My anger stalks on ghetto legs and illuminates the Nordic night like Roman candles or Roman bombs over Ethiopia. Roland Snelling / Askia Touré. We are unfair and unfair. We are black magicians, black arts we make in black labs of the heart. The fair are fair and deathly white. The day will not save them, and we own the night. Leroy Jones, Amiri Baraka. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. James Brown. We insist, freedom now. Max Roach and Abby Lincoln Roach. We must become stone cold killers, panther spirits, invisible men. Night specters, your Uncle Tom teeth brightly grin as you scratch your stepping fetched head while thrusting the blade into the beast's heart and still grinning with your Uncle Tom grin say, you the boss, boss, hee 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 hee. Now try this for size, mother. Larry Neal. The time cracks into furious flower, lifts his face all unashamed, and sways with wicked grace. It is lonesome, yes, but we are the last of the loud. Nevertheless, live, conduct your blooming in the noise and whip of the whirlwind. Gwendolyn Brooks. Malcolm X. He was the sun that tagged the western sky and melted tiger scholars while they searched for stripes. He said, quote, "Fuck you, white man. We have been curled too long. Nothing is sacred now, not your white face, nor any land that separates until some voices squat with spasms." Sonia Sanchez, Laila Manan. The enemies polishing their penises between oil wells at the Pentagon, the bulldozers leaping into demolition dances, the old folks dying of starvation, the informers wearing out shoes looking for crumbs, the lifeblood of the earth almost dead in the greedy mouth of imperialism. And my friend, they don't care if you're an individual, a leftist, a rightist, a head, or a snake. Jane Cortez, the late Jane Cortez. So obviously we were causing some problems. So I just want to give you an example. These are some of the, because a lot of this has been more or less taken away from you or not brought to your attention because this is a raceless society, right? You know, it's just so accidental that our children are being shot down in the streets. You know, what a terrible thing to kill people's children, shoot teenagers. Teenagers are children. I mean, I know the corporate media doesn't project that, but teenagers are children. They're not even grown yet. All over this country, they just shoot a kid in Wisconsin. Unarmed children, not criminals holding up some, but kids shot down. A little boy playing with a BB gun on a playground by himself in Cleveland. Thank God for the everyday people who have the cameras with the video phones now. Back turn playing, cars roll up. This Nazi jumps out, bam, bam, and shoots the kid to death. Doesn't say, son, what are you doing? So just shoots him dead. And then attacks the mother and his sister for rushing to aid their brother. And this is happening all over the country. So this is definitely not a colorless society and so forth, whatever they had the president saying. I don't know. I think I look up President Obama was in Selma too, and we said, well, he maybe should have stayed in the Senate a little longer. Good fellow, but I think he was kind of naive about this country. I'm going to shift from that. I just wanted to give you a sort of a preface of what this was about and where we stood. Now I'm going to shift into some of my work. One of the things that I have always attempted to do as a writer, an artist, a researcher, that was attempting to deal with one of the reasons that white people think black people are inferior is due to colonialism and the actual stealing of the history of black people. And they try to make you feel ashamed or like you some kind of nut if you raise questions about this. And so it's not just black people feeling inferior and being brainwashed. White people are brainwashed. Most white people think that black people have never contributed anything to human culture and civilization. And believe this. See, that's where I differ with some of my comrades. Amiri and I had some discussions about this. It's not racism to resurrect the history of your people. That's not racism. Racism in reverse. Well, how is it racism in reverse? We're dealing with our ancestors and our people's history. How is that racism? So they get you so scared and so defensive you don't want to deal with anything. One of the in the effort, the project of restoring the history of black people, I listened to my elders, the great Jollies like John Henry Clark and Doc Ben. I think, by the way, if some of y'all keep up with Dr. Ben, he's getting ready to pass, make his transition. Doc Ben's in his 90s now. Our great historians, Ivan Van Sertima, Dr. Asa Hilliard, and other outstanding scholars and also comrades like Dr. Martin Bernal, the great scholar of the Middle East who dealt with Black Athena, shook up the colonialist-minded world. I guess they call him the equivalent of an N lover, you know, because he said that something like almost 2/3 of the roots of the Greek language is not Greek or Mediterranean. So I parallel with these scholars and masters, I attempted to open the doors to the history of my people. And I'm going to read from the first section of From the Pyramids to the Projects, From the Projects to the Stars, an African American saga. I was deeply surprised when the book by that title I brought out in the late 80s won the 1989 American Book Award. So I'm only going to read a couple of pages, but give you an example of what we had to deal with. Our children are the blessings of our lives. They are the living embodiment of the future. They are the future, knocking at the doors of the present. They are sacred. We should defend our children the way we defend our religion. With them, we represent continuity, the living, the dead, the unborn. So taught our sages 10,000 years ago when we taught the world civilization. Built mighty pyramids, temples 2 miles long by half a mile wide, housing 80,000 students, a sacred university because knowledge, like our children, was sacred then in the Ipet, Isut, Karnak, in the royal city, Waset, Thebes, the queen city of many cities, Abydos, Busiris, Dendera, On, Sais, Saqqara, Menepher, Heliopolis, Amarna, all sacred, splendid, highly populated in that classic age when our great masters taught geometry, medicine, algebra, astronomy, chemistry, philosophy, trigonometry, engineering, music, all the bases of civilization in Africa and Kemet, the Black Land, where we built the Sphinx, the great pyramids, charted the stars, the cosmos, led mankind on new roads into bright tomorrows. We were a handsome people, all the rainbow tones of the sepia spectrum, glowing amber, copper, teak, mahogany, sepia, ebony, indigo, quote, to gleam like an Ethiop, unquote, nature's peacocks, fresh from Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, the Great Lakes regions of the sacred South. We loved ourselves. Were we not humanity? Patars, Cushites, Kemites, mothers and fathers, the world's first great men, women, bearers of dark skin, woolly hair, full, generous features, civilizing parents of humanity. That great sun has set, but the scarlet glow of its splendor lives on in the myths and legends of the world. Once there was a golden, regal people, black as night, who harnessed minds to divinity, grew mightily, became godlike, named the stars and planets, performed miracles, raised the dead, harnessed nature's laws, explored the depths of human minds, discovered higher laws, esoteric, known as magic by the ignorance, discovered time, the clock, hours, minutes, seconds to calendar organized our years, our months, our days, stood us solidly upon human feet, fully conscious of our awesome heritage, sent us out to sanctify the earth. But that great day is past. The cradle land, now quote Africa, was overrun by aliens, Persians, Greeks, Romans, Arabs, hungry peoples who sought to rape the mother, jitters and wisdom, mystical love for baubles such as gold, copper, diamonds, oil, when the greatest treasure is humanity. Slavery abounded, our temples sacked, our cities plundered, libraries become bawdy houses where Greco-Roman pimps sold, quote, progress, magic, philosophy, science to the developing world, claiming that these Ethiopian maidens were products of their degenerate mentalities. Later, migrating south into Nubia and beyond, into the interior of the continent, her children rebuilt upon foundations of their heritage, created other empires, Kush, Carthage, Ghana, Mali, Songhai, Benin, Kanem-Bornu, Oyo, Matamba, Ashanti, Dahomey, Zimbabwe, and a galaxy of many others, all seeking to recreate the golden age, golden land, recreate the cities of legendary learning, sacred like our children, who should be defended like our religion evermore. So that's the first part of From the Pyramids to the Projects, from the projects to the stars. One of the things that I've talked to people over the country, I say, you will notice I did not leave our people in the projects. The full name of the epic is From the Pyramids to the Projects, from the projects to the stars. Because it behooves all of us how we together can reach the stars. I got one more poem in this collection. I was considered, as you may imagine, an extremist because I thought years before Lupita came on the scene, I thought jet black women were the epitome of beauty. Aboriginal elegy, the once and future queen. Glisten in your pristine splendor, Mosetta, my dear. Your magnificent indigo ebony is an aboriginal epic written in melanin, ices of beginning, archetypal image preceding, quote, Eve and the Semite world. You are seed of the legendary great mother whose munificence nurtured the naked ape. Ancient evenings smile with the glow of your brilliant teeth, embraced by the regal chalice of full lips, pleasuring my moods, assuaging volcanic expressions, causing a cool Nile inundation to soothe my maroon passion as I contemplate a Palmares future. You are twin-souled, double-faced, mythic enchantress, modern enhancer of Afrocentric survival wisdom, primordial womb land for personified the Bimsha and the goddess, Nefertari and Cicely Tyson, Hatshepsut Sup and Bessie Smith, Amenertus and Gladys Knight. The ancient world remembered, the modern world enkindled by your protracted consistency, your spiritual impregnability, your spellbinding unsung beauty embodied in a peacock cornucopia of color. Stun us with your scarlets, mauves, vermilions, tangerines, aquas, emeralds, mesmerize us with your cakewalk, black bottom, shimmy, Lindy Hop, boogaloo, shingling, ostrich plumes, bangles, and beads, your midnight sexy panther strut, arching buttocks shimmering like velvet gelatin. And yet a certain, quote, temperate temperament would eradicate your tropical presence like string quartets or muzak, liquidating the blues like Calvinist hymns, erasing spirituals like New Orleans bishops, slandering Marie Laveau like Lawrence Welk, dethroning the Duke of Ellington. You are absent as image in the, quote, Norticized media, forever boring us with renovated myths of Goldilocks as beach girl and fantasy lover, quote, peach skin, model and starlet ad nauseum. Yet, every living day, we observe you move swiftly with rhythmic, hypnotic grace through busy urbanscapes, as though pursuing a lost grandeur. All of that dynamic, charismatic glory, real, living, warm, shocking us deeply into memory, archetypal ecstasy. Yes, unsung, quote, invisible, unquote, the aboriginal queen endures while we contemplate your classic beauty like Taharka, gazing with streaming eyes from far Napata, while Aryans rape his darling Kimmy, her indigo glory lost to him forever. I'm going to read from Mother Earth Responds, Green Poems and Alternative Visions. This is called A Few Words in Passing. This is my latest book. The ancients are right. Our common delusions imprison us all, and our world becomes a modern gulag. But this is only a beginning. How are we to find what truly matters in life? We are indeed fortunate we have elders, Twa, Gagaju, Kung of our human race, yogis, Sufis, lamas, babas, Zen masters, shamans, masters of the inner realm. Only we must initiate contact, seek them out, begin the soul's grand dialogue with self. Perhaps the rainforest can aid us on our paths. Perhaps the mountains, deserts, lakes, and the great oceans. Perhaps the ants, dragonflies, butterflies. Perhaps our fellow mammals. We might seek counsel with dolphins, whales, the happy ones, explain to brilliant ravens, sly crows, immaculate eagles, hawks, vultures, owls. Begin rigorous chats with wolves, bears, tigers, leopards, moose, rabbits, and otters. Beings on our great maternal planet, elay the earth, speaking deep words, mirroring great truths, realigning beings, practicing divine harmony within the realm of being. My friend, when was your last conversation with the rain? Thank you.
All the stories you alluded to about young black men being gunned down, like, I don't remember as many of these 10 years ago. Like, are things getting worse, or was it always like this?
Pretty much, but you know, we got a black first family in the White House. A whole lot of people don't like that. You know, that's more or less like saying that the ancestors here, Frederick Douglass and them, were correct. All people are created equal. They don't believe that. See, but you know, you mess around and crazy stuff happens if you keep beating a dog even, kicking him, whipping and abusing him. Pretty soon he might start growling and try to take off your hand. I don't know, as you all hear the thing, I'm not surprised, you know, because I never was, I'm with James Foreman, a SNCC. I believe in nonviolence as a tactic, not as a philosophy. I believe that everything has a right to defend themselves. So I guess recently they kicked the dog too much, and a couple of them got shot up in Ferguson. People say, oh my God, did you eat? I said, what do you expect? You're gonna keep killing kids? And you know they burned the church in Ferguson too. The Klan had put a note on the door warning the minister there, the reverend, and telling him that if he didn't shut the hell up and quit making trouble, something was gonna happen to his church, and they burned the church. So, you know, you don't be surprised. The thing that bothers me about all this is, you know, this marked my young manhood. All my life I've been fighting these reactionary forces. And I guess it was naivety on our part, but we thought, well, at least the young people won't have to go through that mess. At least we got that, you know? And then it's like starting all over again. The kids go to college, and these demons just shoot the kids down in the streets. And so we said, you know, my God, they got to do this all over again. And so that's the terrible thing about this whole experience, that you guys, we thought that you guys could take democracy and turn it from, as Brother Malcolm said, turn it from hypocrisy into democracy. And then all of a sudden they're shooting your comrades down in the streets, they're murdering people and so forth. And any people in the rest of the world call this Nazism. You know, I don't know if you all are aware of it, but I'm sure you are, because you all are wizards with the internet and all of that. But thousands of people all over the world have been marching in solidarity with the African American people against these monsters, these killer cops. I mean, you can just shoot a 14, 16, 17-year-old kid down in the street, leaving there, like Michael Brown, for 4 hours in the street, and you are not brought up on charges. And this is all over the country. Somebody said they shot a young fella out on the West Coast. You know, it's just getting so crazy. See, what we have, I don't know if you all, so I don't know how much you all know about things, but we know that the police, police director in Los Angeles was recruiting these guys from Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana to join the Los Angeles police force. So, because I guess they figured, you guys know, you have a history of dealing with these minorities. So what do you expect? In other words, the Klan is taking off his robes and put on blue uniforms on one section. The other section is putting on suits and ties and with briefcase and calling itself the Tea Party. So it seems like the more America changes, the more it remains the same. So it's someone who's, you know, really been in this thing, and certainly I could say for the women and men of my generation, it's just devastating for us to find out that you all got to go through this mess again. So we thought, well, we'll build a base and the young people take this thing forward. It's like just running around in a loop, like. So we're very frustrated about it, but we are very encouraged by the young people of all groups and ethnicities and so forth, who stood together against. I mean, you know, they said, well, Homeland Security, yes, we were guard America against the terrorists, because you know what happened in New York. Everybody said, well, okay, but all right. And so they give all these guys this stuff, and they start shooting the colored people. They said, well, wait a minute, Lim, we weren't talking about shooting the colored people. What's going on? We're fighting the enemies. They said, but these are the poor people in our neighborhoods. What? Now, people who live through, I have an old friend, some of you may know him, great Italian-American visionary artist, one of the great artists of the 21st century. He's in his 80s now. He lived through World War II. His name is Aldo Tambolini. He calls me up. He said, Askia, that's how they start. That's how to start the brown shirts and stuff. Because he saw that. He said, these people don't learn from history. So I said, boy, I'm telling you, you know, with all this crazy stuff in the world, I feel sorry for God. I said, humanity is a handful, boy. Humanity is a handful. They starving the widows in India. I said, well, you know, I'm sure the old man, Gandhi and them would try to do something, but the women, they get the people, the mothers and stuff, starving the widows in India. What kind of a nonsense is that? And they, you know, lost their husband, families abandoned them, and the widows are out like the homeless here in America. What kind of world is this? I said, boy, I don't know. I said, boy, God must have infinite patience. I said, I feel sorry for the Creator, boy. I said, humanity is a handful, boy. Not to mention what we've been doing with the animals and the birds and tearing up our beautiful Eden, our mother planet. And I don't know now, would y'all correct me if I'm wrong? Have they ever fixed those nuclear reactors in Japan? Are they still leaking that stuff into the ocean? Do y'all know anything about that?
Kind of unfixable.
Yeah, because, you know, they said in California, dead sea animals like seals and otters and things are washing up on the shores as well as the fish. You know, because, you know, there ain't no 4 or 5 oceans. Y'all know it's one ocean. Because fish go everywhere. It's one ocean. And so forth. So it's the kind of thing like that. But I'm sorry for rambling on, but it's just amazing what's happening. And it's like trying to, you know, contain a barrel of tigers and so forth, you know. I don't know what it's going to take. I just hope we're not, with these wars too, I hope the stage is not being set for World War III, because it'll be an atomic wars. So this is pretty bad. I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm in my mid-70s now. I didn't think I'd live this long, you know. And it's just very painful, particularly for the young people that, you know, you always say, well, you know, the kids, they'll take care of it. It won't be the shit.
There's a lot of imagery and related to sort of shamanism and jollies and things like that. And
yeah.
Could you speak to some of those aspects of your experiences?
Yeah, it was our good fortune during the period. It was an interesting period in this country, roughly from about the 60s to even into the 80s and 90s. A lot of people from around the world came to the United States, and we got to meet a lot of the yogis and Sufis and mystics, the Zen masters, and so you start seeing all these different paths of spirituality and human development. And so my thing was, I was wondering, why is everybody acting so crazy? We got all these teachers just kind of, you know, working here, wanting to help us and stuff. And I can only have the greatest amount of gratitude and admiration for them. But it's just kind of one thing that we have to really watch out about. People in the West is individualism. We have to really watch out about individualism. I don't mean, believe in yourself and so forth, but it seems like most of the people of the world tend to be more communal, family, village, communal or oriented. And they don't understand individualism. That'll make you, comfortable in your yacht while widows starve and stuff. So they don't understand that, And that's the thing that really bothers me. People mouth things, but, are we acting like we're one human family? Every so often, I do see some good people, like the people standing up today and all over this country, and that gives me hope. And the children, always the children, But we got a lot of battles to fight still, I'm afraid. I thought that as I left the planet that, the kids, a lot of people say, well, we got a black president. So, well, he got too much power, has he? Well, the Congress went and wrote the Iranians and threatened them. President said, what the hell is going on? I'm the chief executive of the United States. Who are these guys? So you got fooled, and so what they're doing, and I don't know how you all see it, but they're fighting the Civil War again. That's what they're doing. We don't have to just get rid of this ape. We're the real men that are running America. So that's the problem that you guys got. And those of us who have been veterans and so forth, we're at your disposal to give you some idea of how we resolve certain things. But this is a whole another world, a whole digital world. And so, general principles are good, but I hate to say it, but a lot of this, so you all gonna have to figure this out. We're good to give you our past experiences and how we tried to change things, but the challenges you face are much more refined and complicated. And but I think it's something that all of humanity is going to have to really ask itself: do we truly want a human family, and are we at one with all the beings on the planet? Because our actions are not that way. And the wiping out of the great herds and so forth, just killing. What kind of people are at war with all living things? That's why I wrote Mother Earth Responds, my green poems and alternative visions, because I was trying to put in uphold the shamans and the Zen masters and the great wise peoples of the world and their traditions, and they don't act like this. This is like some psychopath has stolen it, has got the whole neighborhood with guns on them, and everybody said, who are these guys? Shut up, get up against the wall. And man, we got to somehow find a way to help these people that are doing these things to become humanized, because they're making war on everything alive. It's not just human beings. My experience, I was so human-centric, but the squirrels and stuff ain't bothering anybody, and the eagles and stuff, they making war on everything. So we have to really find out what we can do to turn this thing around. Any comments or questions? Because I want feedback from you. And so we're dealing with a timeline. Right? Okay. Well, it's been my pleasure to read here and to communicate with you, and I'm so glad that you came out, because this weather's been a pip, And I hope you enjoyed, at least you got some idea of what some of us were about. And remember, we can't do it without each other. If we really want to change these things, we have to be the change that we desire. Thank you so much for coming, and it's a pleasure reading and sharing with you. Askia.